Hello students. Today we are going to discuss about application layer in computer networks. Here I am considering that you all are aware about basics of computer networks, its terminologies, OSI reference model and TCP/IP protocol suite. As you know that the application layer is the topmost layer in the OSI reference model which directly interact with the user. The learning objectives for today's session are to understand the need of DNS, that is domain name system, to understand the concepts of domain name space, to understand the working of domain name servers. In this session, we will discuss about DNS, that is domain name system. What comes to our mind in very first moment is what is the need of DNS? As we know that all the requests which we send to get the information should be numerical numbers, which is known as the network address, as network understands only numerical addresses. For different information, we need to remember different network addresses, which is quite difficult. The second problem was when the ISP, that is Internet Service Provider or organization, moves its server, they need to update the network address. To overcome all such problems, DNS comes to the picture. Again, here the question arises is that what was the history behind DNS? How the whole system was managed before the implementation of DNS system? So, in the early days, one file was managed which was having the information of host name and its network address. Whenever a user want to know the network address of any host, user need to fetch the data from the file and they can send the request to that particular network. But day by day, the use of network increases and the data also increased. Now, to maintain the record in one file was not the feasible solution, and the invention of DNS occurred in 1983. So let's now understand the structure of DNS, which is also known as domain name space. DNS is implemented using tree structure, which means it follows particular hierarchy. That is, root followed by top level domain, subdomain, sub-subdomain, and so on. The figure shows the idea behind the domain namespace. As shown in the figure, the top level domain is divided into two parts, that is, generic and country. Based on the type of domain, all the domains are categorized in these two categories of top level domain. For example, if the domain name is in, then it will fall under country category, as in means India. Similarly, edu, which means education, falls under generic category. The request is made up of different components, which are separated by dots. These dots are also called as periods. For example, if a user has sent request as cn.devstar.charusat.edu, then here four different components cn, devstar, charusat and edu. Basically, the domain name is classified in two categories, that is absolute and relative. So how to differentiate absolute domain name and the relative domain name? Here, absolute domain name always ends with a period, while the relative domain name never ends with a period. Domain names are not case sensitive. So, if user writes in the small letter edu or in capital edu or only e capital and du in the small letters, that does not make any changes. Note that length of component name must not exceed 63 characters and the length of whole path must not exceed 255 characters. After understanding the structure of DNS, let's understand how the domain regarding records are maintained. Basically, the primary function of DNS is to map domain name with record. A resource record is made up of 5 tuples, which are encoded in binary, that is, domain name, TTL, class, type, and value. Now let's understand each tuple turn by turn. The domain name behaves like a primary key. With the help of domain name, DNS can fetch any of the record. TTL stands for time to live, which indicates the stability of record. The value written for this tuple must be numerical. If the value is larger, that means that record is having high stability, otherwise low stability. The third tuple is class. It categorizes the record in two categories, that is internet information and non-internet information. For the mostly records, the value for class tuple is IN, which shows internet information category. After that, type and value tuples are there. Value tuple depends on the type tuple. The type tuple will provide the information regarding the type of the record. According to the type of the record, value tuple will have the different values like numerical, binary, or ASCII. Now it comes to our mind that which type of records can be listed out. So here the table shows different types of records, its meaning, and what should be the value for the particular type of record. First type is SOA, which means start of authority. It provides the information related to primary source of information about the name server zone, email address of its administrator, unique serial number, etc. Most important type is A, which stands for address. It holds 32-bit IP address for host. Next type is MX, which stands for mail exchange. It specifies the name of the host prepared to accept email for the specified domain. NS stands for name server, which specifies the name of the server. CNAME stands for canonical name, which represents another name for the domain. PTR is also used to represent the same thing which was represented by CNAME. Hinfo records allow people to find out what kind of machine and operating system a domain corresponds to. Finally, TXT. TXT records allow domains to identify themselves in arbitrary ways. Now let's understand the concept of multiple domain name servers. The issue with a single domain name server was it needed to handle all the request queries from distinct users. Because of single point of response to the request queries, sometimes it may happen that server goes overloaded, and because of that it may get down and it becomes no use of that server. Sometimes it may happen that server gets failure, and because of that it might happen that all the data get lost. So to overcome these issues, multiple servers are used at different levels. It uses two types of queries, recursive and iterative query. We will understand each after understanding the whole scenario with the help of an example. Now, consider that here a user or organization sends the query to local server. Now, the query which was sent is computernetwork.cs.devstar.charoset.edu. Now, what happens? The local server will check record maintained by itself. Now, consider the scenario that the query which is sent for the very first time, so that local server does not have any record regarding the query. So what it does, it checks the address or information in the nearby local servers. Now again consider that the nearby servers also don't have any information regarding the query. In this case, the local server will forward the query to the EDU server. Now EDU server will provide the response for the Charuset server. It will not provide the whole information as the EDU server don't have any record regarding the whole path. So now after getting the information or address for the Charuset server, local server again forwards the query to the Charuset server. And Charuset server will provide response for the Dapstar server. Now local server forwards the query to the Dapstar server and get the response for the CS server. Finally, the local server forwards the query to the CS server and it provides the response for the computer networks. Thus, local server gets the whole path or response for the given query and gives this response to the user. The whole scenario represents that the method which is used to handle the query is the recursive query, as it gives the whole answer to the user. The other way to give the response is iterative query, in which server provides only the partial information. As we have shown in the figure that the EDU server, Charuset server, Dapstar server, and CS server provides the partial information to the local server. In the next section, we will discuss regarding electronic mail. Thank you.